The year 1983. Not only was Madonna riding high on the charts, Alexander Solzhenitsyn was receiving an award. The Templeton Prize for Progress in Religion was awarded to this Soviet poet, politician, and facial hair model. He described why he believed the Russian Revolution took place. He remembered the words of the elders in his childhood when they said, "Men have forgotten God." That's how a Russian speaks. "Men have forgotten God. That is why this happened." And whilst my accent was pretty horrendous, their words ring true. When men forget God, what fills in the vacuum? Inevitably, godlessness. What is true for Russia is true for Western civilization today. We have seen men forgetting God. Statistic after poll after research, it has concluded Americans do not know proper theology, and that means they don't know God. Just because they profess a belief in some sort of a deity, unless it is the biblical God, the true and the living God, they don't know God. That means they do not have an inner moral compass. And when there is not an inner moral compass, there must be an external force to keep them in line. Chuck Colson talked about this. When there is nothing inside of a man that keeps him from behaving the way that he would prefer to, which tends to be rather evil, there must be an external force. So if you don't have an awakened conscience, you are going to have a lot of cops that need to control civilization. Otherwise, you've got chaos. In this instance, in contemporary times, when God has been replaced from our society, when the correct knowledge about God has been so blurred that people aren't believing in the only true and living God, what do we expect but more revolution? For your consideration, this ain't going to make your heart jump for joy. A poll was recently done by Ligonier. Every 2 years, they determine the state of religion in America. How is this country doing when it comes to theology? And what you are about to see going to break your little Christian heart, and it's going to cause you to go, no wonder why we are seeing what we are seeing in our world today. Here is the state of theology. Jesus was a great teacher, but he wasn't God. A survey says 30% agree, 66% disagree. You say, well, that isn't too horrible. I haven't told you the punchline. These aren't just any Americans, and all of the statistics you're about to see, these are evangelical Americans. That's right. 30% of Americans are evangelicals. Out of that 30% hold a heretical position. Now, you got to keep up with the math. Sorry about that. You might need to dust off that abacus as we continue to add up these theological positions that people hold that are sub-Christian. In other words, they're disqualified from the kingdom of God because they don't understand a foundational truth. The number of Americans who are genuinely saved shrinks and shrinks and shrinks. Is Jesus Christ really God, or was he just a good teacher? If only there were a booklet available at wretched.org that gave, I don't know, say 22 proofs that Jesus is God. Those evangelicals who seem to be a wee bit confused would have a whole lot of clarity. Why? Because you can hardly read the Bible without seeing clearly that Jesus Christ is God. How do we know Jesus is God? How's about the Old Testament prophesied that Jesus Christ would be God? You know, the Messiah would be Emmanuel, God with us. How's about the Old Testament prophesied the birth of this King of Kings and Lord of Lords? Who is that? Jesus Christ. How's about Jesus himself received worship. Who alone is supposed to receive worship? God only. That's what Jesus told the devil, and yet he himself received worship. Why? Because he's worthy of worship, because he is God. Furthermore, Jesus made it clear that he is the fulfillment of the fuzzy pictures in the Old Testament. He is the bread, the manna in the wilderness. He is the water that sprang from a rock. And he is I am. Who's I am? Oh yeah, God's name for himself revealed in Deuteronomy. Who is Jesus Christ? Was he just the Son of Man? Which, by the way, in Daniel chapter 7, is not a title of humanity. It is actually a title of deity, and Jesus calls himself the Son of Man. Why? Because he's actually God in flesh. Furthermore, titles of God are ascribed to Jesus Christ. God alone is the Alpha and the Omega. What does Revelation say that Jesus calls himself? The Alpha and the Omega. Why? Because Jesus Christ used titles of God to ascribe them to himself. Why? Because he is God. It is clear, it is undeniable that Jesus Christ is indeed God in flesh. It is a foundational truth that was given by Jesus himself. If you don't understand him rightly, you don't have the Father. In other words, you're not saved. That means that 30% of the 30% who should be saved in this country aren't. But wait, the math keeps adding up. And when we get to the bottom line, what is going to sadly be revealed is that so many people who are thinking they're going to say, Lord, Lord, let me in. He's going to say, depart from me, because I never knew you, because they did not know him rightly. And that is precisely why the totaling of these statistics comes up with a bottom line that says, no wonder why America is in such big trouble. Pepperoni pizza for Pete, which in an odd way is a lot like the difference between imputation and expiation. Are you familiar with the difference, Pete?
I didn't order a pizza?
But it actually in Latin means completely, to completely atone. It's a Latin word, expiationem, and yet an action noun because it comes from the past participle stem of